This conversation is brought to you with the kind compliments of CALL, that is, the Commonwealth of Learning. Gender inequality must be eradicated, and CALL is on a mission to help in its obliteration. It has embarked on a project to help young women and girls become motivated to pursue their fields of interest and build the future generation of leaders by launching the CommonwealthWiseWomen project. This is a mentoring program that links girls from across the Commonwealth with mentors also from across the Commonwealth who are women in leadership roles with a story deserving of emulation. But CALL does not stop there. CALL is now taking that initiative further by creating this podcast series where I get the opportunity and privilege to interview some of these distinguished women and hear the path they took or the path that took them to leadership. COVID-19 has joined the long list of contributors to gender inequality, including globalization, technology, and climate change. But stay with us through this 10-episode series and hear how women have made their way over and around these hurdles. I am Dr. Ann Wallace, a higher education management and e-learning specialist, and I will be your host. Today's episode is entitled Female Role Models and Home Training, Leadership Prep, and it is by Mrs Motun Ige. Welcome, Mrs. Ige.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wallace, and thank you so much for inviting me on this.
It is absolutely my pleasure. So what I'd like to do is to introduce our listeners to you by reading a little bit of your very, very impressive bio. So please allow me to read the bio. Mrs. Catherine Motun Ige is the head of school at the Ibadan International School based in Ibadan, Oyo State, Nigeria. She has over 24 years of experience in the educational sector and is a principled, dedicated, and thorough administrator. She is a motivator and, now listen to this, an empowerer and a stickler for detail. She is committed to the attainment of quality education for all and to gender equality, two of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are crucial to the growth and development of Nigeria as a country, Africa as a continent, and the world as a whole. In addition to her role at Ibadan International School, she served on the board of directors of the Association of International Schools in Africa for 8 years, on the board of governors of All Saints Church School in Ibadan for 4 years, and is currently on the board of directors of the Alliance Française in Ibadan. She's also a workshop leader, a trainer, and a consultant for the International Baccalaureate Organization, carrying out workshops, authorization visits, and program evaluation visits on their behalf in her region, which is Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. A lot of traveling there. She enjoys reading and traveling and is the mother of 3 young adults. Now, if you look at her, you wouldn't say so, but she is. Mrs. Ige, you are a very busy lady, and we are very happy to have you here with us. For the benefit of our leaders in the Commonwealth, or our listeners, I say, in the Commonwealth, please tell us what you do.
As you so nicely said, Dr. Wallace, I'm currently the head of school at the Ibadan International School, which is based in Nigeria. It's an IB World School, and very proudly, the first IB PYP school to be authorized in the whole of Nigeria, which was in 2008. Wow. So that's what I do. That's what I do, yes.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. Now, your mother was the principal of the secondary school that you attended, and I cannot imagine what that must have meant. But is this why you chose to follow in her footsteps?
Definitely not. Well, first of all, she was the vice principal of the secondary school I attended. And I must tell you, in my formative years, I did not want to be anything like my mother. But you know what? I've eaten my words, because I'm exactly like my mother. And that's what we tend to do, daughters. We tend, whether we like it or not, whether we do it willingly or not, or knowingly or not, we tend to follow in our mother's footsteps. So, quick answer to that question. Yes, she was vice principal of the secondary school I attended. I hated every minute of her being vice principal because I was under the microscope. Everything I did wrong was reported to her immediately. And growing up, I didn't actually envisage or see myself following in her footsteps, but I'm really thankful that I did.
Oh, yes, isn't it just? But that's very good. But in hindsight, now, would you say that there are situations at that school that pointed you in that direction?
Honestly, no. Again, that might be slightly controversial, but honestly, no. I mean, my upbringing, my background, education wasn't a privilege. It was something that we all had access to, myself and my siblings. And also, it wasn't, I have a brother, I have two sisters. It wasn't that my older brother got preferential treatment. We were all treated equally by my parents. I must say right now, I'm biracial. My mom's English, my dad's Nigerian, but I was born and bred in Nigeria. So we were lucky. We were lucky in a third world country, in a Commonwealth country. We were lucky that we were exposed to a good quality education back in the 60s and 70s. And there was no differentiation between boys and girls and access to education. It was the norm. It was the expectation that we all were going to get a good quality education and we were all going to go to university. Like I said, we were lucky. Like when we talk about, gender equality in Africa, in the Commonwealth, when we talk about access to a quality education, not every child, not every girl child is lucky enough to have access to that. And I know how lucky I was that I was given access to that.
That's great. I'm really very happy to hear that. And I'm happy that you're recognizing that you were, to use your own words, lucky, because that was not the norm all across the continent at that time, and perhaps all across the world at that time. But going back to that era, what challenges did you encounter as a teenager that could have derailed you, and why didn't they derail you, or did they derail you? I'll tell you what, I had many a derailable challenge.
Okay, and to put this into context, my teenage years, my formative years were in the late 70s. So, because I was born in the late 60s. So yes, there were, I know the world has changed. I know that the face of derailments in inverted commas have changed slightly, but there were still challenges out there. There were still things that could derail. Why wasn't I derailed? Because, and I'm really happy that the word home training came up. It's a very Nigerian term, home training, which is also upbringing. What you learn at home. Because we all know that formal education begins and ends within the walls of a school. But non-formal education is taught at home, how to be respectful, how to be disciplined, how to be polite, how to be principled. And home training is a very big word in Nigeria, how your parents bring you up, how you distinguish from a very early age what is right, what is wrong, and what the repercussions for your behavior were going to be if you did something wrong. So luckily, I'm going to use this word lucky constantly through this interview. Again, I was lucky because I had very positive parents who had a very positive marriage, and that is not the norm, especially not nowadays. That's not the norm for a lot of our children, boys and girls. I was lucky. I came from a very stable background. My parents were very much middle class. My dad was an engineer, my mom was a teacher and then vice principal. But they were strict. There's no other word I can use. I had strict parents, and I knew from an early age what was right, what was wrong, and what the repercussions were.
That's great. That's wonderful to know. And I think that it's important for our young people to understand that this what you call home training, or what here in the Caribbean we call upbringing, and the rest of the world, is so important. It is as important as the formal education environment, which contributes to our development in overt and covert ways. And talking about that, would you say anything in your education exposure groomed you for leadership? Now, I know that your secondary school was on a university campus. Oh my goodness. Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
A good thing to look for them. The examples were there. And it was there every day that, if you worked hard and if you studied hard, that, the world was your oyster. There was nothing you couldn't do. Again, I'm going to use this word lucky. I was lucky because in my family, there was no differentiation between my brother and the three girls. We were all, we were all held to the same standard. Work hard, get good marks, get into a good university, get a good job, and then the world was yours. There were no glass ceilings. There was no, okay, because you're a girl, we're expecting you to learn how to cook and clean. It wasn't like that. Of course, we learned how to cook and clean, but so did my brother. And so, so bringing it back to my secondary school and the fact that it was on a university campus, the examples were there. You could see what you could achieve if you worked hard.
Very good. That's great. I'm glad that you're emphasizing the fact that there was no differentiation between yourself and your brother because of your gender, because even in today's environment, that is still a challenge across the world. But tell me, and I like too that you place a lot of emphasis on your family and your family circle. Would you say that that family circle that you were brought up in or homeschooled in, is that what molded you into being the person you are today? Or are you a deviation from the background, a little bit of rogue, a little bit of rebel, or were you just mommy's angel?
I definitely was mommy's angel.
Well, I'm sure mommy
It
would
helped.
like to hear that.
It helped. It helped. I mean, you cannot underemphasize, a framework and parameters, especially for children growing up, and the family framework, parameters, the do's and don'ts, and the norms of your family. But did I conform? No, because again, let me put it down to, I was lucky. I was allowed to express myself from a young age. I wasn't pushed into a career. I'm actually a translator by profession before I came into education. So I wasn't pushed into a career like a lot of my friends were, whose parents would make the choices for them and say, right, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be an accountant, you're going to be a lawyer. I actually did languages because I had an interest in languages from a young age. So that was what I did my first and second degrees in. So again, it's going to sound like I'm going to sound like a broken record now. Again, I was lucky.
That's great. Well, I don't think that being lucky makes you a broken record. I think it is very important for the young women and girls listening to us to understand the differences that exist in our world and the humility that you're bringing to this, the recognition that things went better for you than perhaps for others. I really appreciate that. But tell me something. What was your entry point at the Ibadan International School as an employee? Did you enter as, from the beginning and work your way up, or did you come in at the top as head of school?
I definitely did not come in at the top as head of school. It's a very interesting story. I came in as the head of preschool, the preschool section. Now, the Ibadan International School has got 3 sections, pre, the junior, and the senior school. I came in as preschool supervisor. And within 2 years, I became the head of school. And I know you're probably going to ask the next question, how ambitious was I? Was this what my whole plan was, to become the head of school? And again, the simple answer is no. All I did was work hard. I was really, really interested in education, especially early childhood, because that is a foundation for life. Mm-hmm. To have a literate, numerate nation, you need to really, really, really invest in early childhood education, because that's the building blocks for an educated person, learning how to be numerate and literate. So yes, I was really interested in early childhood education. I came in there, that was my forte, that was my initial training. After I had re-qualified in education, I wasn't looking to be head of school, but obviously my stars aligned. My hard work and effort and dedication paid off. And when the job was offered to me, 2 years into me heading preschool, I leapt at it. I didn't have much experience, but I knew that with a clear head and with dedication and with perseverance and with hard work, it wasn't rocket science.
Great. Now you see what jumps out at me there are a few things. I didn't have much experience, but a clear head, dedication, hard work, opportunity presented itself, and you took it. I think that is very, very important for us to understand, because as women, sometimes we refuse to step forward because we don't think we have enough behind us. We don't have the experience. So this is great. I am happy to hear you say this. Great. Okay, even in 2021, the person who is the head of school is usually an ogre, someone to be dreaded and feared. And the first thought that comes to mind when one thinks of the head of school is, let's go and see Mr. So-and-so. But hey, here it is. We have our head of school, who is no ogre. She's in fact a beautiful woman. And how do we reconcile this? Is this a challenge?
That's a really, really interesting question. I am not the norm for the head of an international school in Nigeria or in West Africa. I'm not the norm, because the norm is oftentimes, more often than not, an older European gentleman. So a lot of times when people have walked in through the doors of Ibadan International School and asked for the head of school, and I have presented myself, they have just assumed that maybe I'm the head of school's PA. But again, in my job, honestly, I've gotten through thus far with a sense of humor and not a very big ego, because what I know for a fact is that it's not how you look, it's what you do. And this is what I try and tell my girl children in school, because it's a mixed sex school. I tell my girls that, gender it's not what defines you, it's what you do, it's your actions that define you. It's your knowledge that defines you. That is what defines you. Somebody who looks like me, first of all, mixed race, brown skinned, female, and who might look a bit younger than her years. I must tell you, though, that my eldest child is 27, and he was born when I was in my late 20s. I wasn't a teenage bride. So,
okay, if you say that, I will accept that. I will accept that. If you say that, it's not what it looks like to me, but I will accept it. Well, when I read your bio, I could not help but notice words like principled, dedicated, thorough, stickler for detail. And I thought, wow, this sounds like a really strict person. But here I am speaking with you, and I'm getting this strong sense that you're actually a fun person. Tell us, Mrs. Ige, what do you do for fun?
Wow, okay. What do I do for fun? I love to travel and I love music. These are the two things that keep me that keep me alive outside of work. that keep me learning, that keep me interested in the world around me. I do a lot of travel. On behalf of the IB, the work that I do for the IB, I travel. I used to, pre-COVID, of course, used to travel all over the world. My region for the region I work in for the IB is Africa, Europe, the Middle East. I also travel a lot for leisure. Anytime that I'm not at work, I enjoy discovering new places with my children. I have 3 kids. So I love to travel and I love music. I listen to a wide repertoire of music. And for the work-life balance, I find that I have learned, again, it's taken time. Nothing just comes to you overnight. I've learned to work hard, but play hard too outside of work. I mean, at school, I tell my kids, the only place that play comes before work is in the dictionary. In true life, you work hard before you play hard.
The Pathway to Female Leadership is brought to you with the kind compliments of the Commonwealth Wise Woman Project.
Before we went to break, you were telling us about your fun side. And I'd like you to explain for the young women and the girls who I am sure are listening very attentively to you right now, and explain why it is important for leaders to create this work-life balance, but more importantly, why is it necessary for a female leader?
That's an excellent question, Dr. Wallace. It's really, really important. Okay, so first, for leaders, it's really important because, the buck stops with you at work. As a leader, no matter how many employees you have or how many colleagues you have, the buck stops with you. And that's a huge responsibility, whatever industry you're in. It's a huge responsibility, even more so in a school environment, because you're responsible for your students, you're responsible for your staff, and you're responsible for learning because, again, formal education, that's what it's all about. It's all about student learning. It's a huge responsibility and it can be very, very draining. So that's why it's really, really important to make sure that you learn. But again, it's learned behavior. It doesn't happen naturally. No. It's learned behavior. You need to learn that literally when you step out of the physical or nowadays the virtual premises of the school, you shut that door. Mm-hmm. Because and you leave those problems behind that closed door, whether it's a physical door or virtual door. Because guess what? Those problems are still going to be waiting for you the next morning. And if you don't recharge your batteries overnight and evening overnight, you're going to be exhausted facing those problems. But like I said, this is learned behavior. But I remember I was taking my work problems home, and that was not good for my relationship. And that was not good for my children because my children were younger then. And I paid a big price there. So it was learned behavior, learning that, whatever issues you're dealing with at work, whatever problems you might be having at work, leave them at work. Because guess what? They're going to be waiting for you the next day. And you working back into, like I said, physical or virtual work with a clearer head will be much better for you than walking back in exhausted. Something has to give because as women, we're nurturers, we're givers, we have children, we stay up late at night when our babies are ill, we have to take time off work when our children have to go to the hospital with broken bones or whatever. We sit up late at night helping them with their homework, and yet we still have to deliver at work. Mm-hmm. And then we still have to be good wives and good sisters and good daughters and good daughters-in-law and ultimately good mothers-in-law. Something has to give, and you need to learn how to step back and look after yourself, whether it's with exercise, with nutrition, with sleep, good old-fashioned sleep. Mm-hmm. But it's learned behavior. Yes. For me, it's learned behavior.
Yeah, that's very, very informative. I think it is something that a lot of women, and not necessarily the ones who are our primary audience right now, young women and girls, but even women who are in the workplace still need to learn that behavior that you're describing. It's certainly an interesting question, but guess what? You gave us a very interesting answer. You have to fight a battle more than once to win it, a famous lady once said. Mrs. Ige, listening to you, you have broken through the glass ceiling. Do you feel, and I use the word fight figuratively, do you feel that you have to constantly fight to stay there?
You have to keep on your toes. But again, and that is in terms of especially in the kind of industry that I'm in, education, you have to keep on your toes. You have to keep current in terms of learning. We're lifelong learners, in terms of training, in terms of knowledge, in terms of the changes in the educational world. You can't rest on your laurels, because the minute you start resting on your laurels, then pack up your bags and go home.
Yeah.
2 years ago, pre-COVID, the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in a country like ours, Nigeria and West Africa, we knew nothing about remote learning.
Mm-hmm.
When the world shut down, it was a steep learning curve for all of us in school, myself included, and we had to learn quick because we knew that we couldn't stop student learning. The kids had to continue learning, even if they were stuck at home. We had to learn, and we learned fast.
Yes.
So no.
That's great. You know, as you're speaking, I remember the words of the late Samora Machel. His mantra was "A luta continua." Indeed, the battle must go on.
Thank you. They must go on. Yes, we can't stop. We can't stop because we owe it. We owe it to the future generation, because they are the ones who are going to change our world. They are the ones who are going to change our world.
And the famous lady who made that comment was the late Prime Minister of the UK, Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher.
Yes.
If we don't do it ourselves, who's going to do it? They are the ones going to change the world. We all know that girls with dreams become women with vision.
Wow.
And we believe that.
You know, another significant woman in our lifetime was Shirley Chisholm. She was an outstanding congresswoman who is now sadly deceased, but she said something very important. She said, tremendous amounts of talent are lost to our society because that talent wears a skirt. Tell me, does the way women dress enhance or diminish their authority?
Again, Dr. Wallace, I have a problem with that question. And I'll tell you the reason why. If you're in a leadership profession that demands professionalism, you need to dress smart, whether you're a man or a woman. It's not important. Do I wear pants to work? Sometimes I do, but they're smart pants. Do I wear skirts to work? Sometimes I do, but they're smart skirts, because that's my profession. I'm a head of school, and I need to dress professionally because I'm a role model as well. I'm a role model for my female staff, but more importantly, I'm a role model for my girl students. Yes. And so if I turned up at work in a little tank top and jeans on a Monday morning, what message would I be sending? That doesn't say that I don't turn up in jeans on a Friday, maybe, if it's a dress down day, and sneakers. But dress smart, dress professional to suit what profession you're in. So,
okay, great. Well, I think what I'm hearing is that the importance of dress applies to anyone, and it is significant to the occasion.
Yes.
I think that's what I'm hearing you say. So our girls, just like our boys, need to know that they need to dress professionally, and the profession is related to whatever it is that they're doing. Thank you so much. What you just said brings over the fact that learning happens all the time, and that you learn from what people set out to teach you, and you learn from what they do. And you, as the receiver or the recipient, must be able to extract that learning. That is really great. And I hope it is a message our girls get. So with that motivating little speech you just gave us, as a motivator and, to use your word, an empowerer, I like that word. I'm going to take so many things from you today. An empowerer. What would you say to our young female listeners trying to overcome situations and plan a path to leadership?
Don't give up. Hard work is hard. That's why it's called hard work. Don't give up. Knowledge is power. And how do you gain knowledge? Through education. Don't give up. It's tough. It's a tough, I mean, I'm not going to pretend. It's a tough world out there, but you know what? We've got to be tougher. We as women, girls out there, young women out there, you've got to be tough. It's a tough world, but don't give up. I think that's the biggest thing I have to say. Don't give up. There are challenges out there. There are issues out there. There's so much gender inequality right from home. Yes. Don't give up. Fight.
We're now in a situation which you spoke about earlier. COVID came. We didn't call it, but it came. And you had to adapt rapidly. And it seemingly now has a long trajectory. Means we're going to be online for a long time. How do you see leaders and teachers who, like you, are leader-minded, influencing young women and girls in this online environment?
That's a really, really interesting question, Dr. Wallace, because online, as much good as comes out from online, a lot of negative comes out, especially with regards to social media. Now, the global south that I am based in, and you have limited access to virtual learning, make sure that limited access works. Make sure that the limited hours, minutes, the limited time, the limited access you have, use it for good.
Yes.
Use it for learning, use it to better yourself, use it to educate yourself. Because you know you are the only one. Nobody else can do it for you. You are the only one that can pull yourself up out of whatever background, out of whatever, you are the only one. You have the power, and power is within you. So whatever access you have to remote learning, use it for good.
Well, you know, as an online specialist myself, I'm very, very happy with your response, because I do believe we can still do a lot of good using the online environment. Thank you for saying that. Now, owing to cultural mores, and I'm very respectful to all cultural mores, girls across the world, and of course girls in the Commonwealth, are deprived of access to higher education, sometimes even access to primary education. And what is perhaps more worthy of discussion is that some of them are forced into marriage while they are still children. If the parents of those children, or those girls, were listening to you today, what would you say to them to dissuade them from these practices?
Girls are just as important as boys.
Yes.
We hold the power of continuity in the world. Girls are as valuable as boys are. Girls are as important. I can't overemphasize this. Girls are as important. Girls need to be educated. It's not a, if you feel like, they have to.
Well, you know, I take that as a totally non-political statement. I take that as your authentic self. This is you speaking, because you come from that environment. From the time we started speaking, you spoke about your environment that made sure you and all your siblings and your brother, who's part of the posse, had equal treatment. And I really hope that parents who exercise these practices can hear you and take heed of what you're saying. As a proponent of equality, and there's no question that you are that, please send a message to all young people listening who may be considering dropping out of school.
Education is power. Education holds the key to the future. Again, I'm speaking from the Commonwealth. I'm speaking from the Global South. Education opens a new world. Education opens an amazing, wonderful new world. Don't drop out. Stay. It's hard. It's difficult. It's challenging. But education is power. Education is knowledge. Knowledge is power. It holds the key to the universe. Being educated.
Yes.
Stay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, you speak so from the heart. You really bring over to us that what you feel is that we are equals and we need one thing to take us forward. That's education. You have done so much. You do so much. You are so involved. In my assessment, you are an accomplished lady. And being so accomplished, what would you say to your 14-year-old self now if you could speak to her?
Work hard. Don't be afraid. Don't let people tell you you can't, because you know what you can. Mm-hmm. If you focus and if you work hard, you will get there. And don't be afraid. My 14-year-old self, don't be afraid. You're good and you got this.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mrs. Ige. We have been in conversation with a dynamic leader from the Commonwealth, the head of school of Ibadan International School, Mrs. Catherine Motun Ige. I thank you.
On behalf of the Commonwealth of Learning Wise Women Project, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Tune in for our next episode when we have another dynamic female leader from across the Commonwealth. I am Dr. Ann Wallace, signing off until the next time.